one for local news, traffic, and weather for Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News 1011 everywhere.
Good afternoon. It's Friday, September 30th. I'm Pirushka Gopal-Kista. Right now in Ottawa and in Smiths Falls, it's sunny and 13 degrees. Here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. It's National Truth and Reconciliation Day around the country, and several events will be held in the nation's capital to commemorate the day. Now, one of the events include a National Day of Remembrance event hosted by the Indigenous Arts Collective of Canada, which is underway at Parliament Hill. Also happening right now is a community march where anyone is welcome to join Indigenous communities and residential school survivors. Now, this march is to call on the federal government to change the name of the Sir John A. Macdonald Parkway. And tonight, the Parliament Peace Tower will be illuminated in orange until tomorrow morning. The National Chief of the Assembly of First Nations says today is about honoring the survivors of Canada's residential schools and the children who never made it home. Roseanne Archibald says the day should be one of reflection about the people at the institutions and Canada's residential school history.
It's their day, especially those that suffered in those institutions and survived. And then I also feel that it's for all the little ones who died.
Now, the federal government announced the National Day of Reconciliation last year, shortly after the discovery of suspected unmarked graves at a former residential school in Kamloops, British Columbia. Now, the province of Ontario has not declared today a stat holiday, so not everything will be opened in Ottawa today. Places like Canada Post and banks will remain closed, while schools, shopping centres and grocery stores are all open today with regular hours. Now, most museums in Ottawa also remaining open and will have free admission for today. As for City of Ottawa services, garbage and recycling collection will go ahead as usual, but some of Ottawa's recreation centres will have limited operation hours, so you might want to check ahead of time if you're planning to head to some of those rec centres today. As for transit, OC Transpo and Paratranspo will run as usual on the regular weekday schedule. Now, speaking of the roads, major traffic impacts are expected to be significant this weekend on the 417. The highway will be closed to a 5-kilometer stretch in both directions between Metcalfe and Carling. Now, this is so that crews can replace the Rochester Bridge, so many detours are expected around that area. The closure starts tonight at 8 p.m. and it will reopen early Tuesday morning. Now, over on the East Coast, the aftermath of Hurricane Fiona and Hurricane Ian that we're seeing right now, we're getting a better idea of the consequences of climate change. Sidia Sona Aslam is finding out how major weather events like this are actually dragging down Canada's economy.
The new report from the Canadian Climate Institute finds damages are already adding up from hurricanes, heat domes, floods, and fires. And it says by 2025, climate change will slow the country's economy by $25 billion a year. The Institute's Sarah Miller says with that comes a warning of job losses in the future, with low-income households suffering the most.
We see shrinking incomes over time. We also see increasing cost of living. There's increased direct damages to people's homes and businesses. We also see that the price of everyday goods goes up as supply chain disruptions take hold. So it's a whole mix of things coming together to really hurt household affordability.
She adds taxes will also likely need to rise as governments try to cover the cost of climate change. Sonia Aslam, City News.
City News time 12:04. Right now in Ottawa, it's mostly sunny and 13 degrees. I'm Pirushka Gopal-Kista. For news anytime, head to ottawa.citynews.ca.
Connecting you and your community. This is the Sam LaPrade Show on City News
1011 FM and 1310 AM.
Thank you so much for joining us here on City News. This is a special edition of the Sam LaPrade Show. We are recognizing the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. Today you will meet many people from across Canada on this topic, on this very important topic. We're going to be speaking with authors. We're going to be speaking with leaders and elders And we wanted to give you a sense of what's happening, of course, across the country, but specifically here in the nation's capital to recognize this very important day. We wanted to start today with Nicholas McCarthy from Beechwood Cemetery. Hi, Nicholas.
Hey, Sam. How goes it?
Great. Nicholas, I know you have a very long title. Remind me of your role.
I'm the Director of Marketing, Communications, and Community Outreach for Beechwood Cemetery and Beechwood Cemetery Foundation.
I do know that you work about 80 hours a week, so you're a very busy person. And Nicholas, as we know, the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation, a very important opportunity for all of us to pause, to learn. And you've got lots of opportunities for people to do that today.
Yeah, so as we've spoken before, we've had a plaque program in Beechwood since the 90s. And then a year before the Truth and Reconciliation came out, we started with Dr. Blackstock and the Caring Society. We started changing the plaques to make them more honest and make them sort of to show both the positive aspects of the individuals as well as the negative role they played within. So today we're actually welcoming people from 9 a.m. till 7 p.m. tonight to come visit the grounds. We're inviting you to watch a movie about Jordan's Principles, which is the idea that Indigenous children can go back home for palliative care services instead of dying in hospital. And then we, along with our partners, A7G, are asking you to walk around the grounds and learn about Duncan Campbell Scott, who was the Superintendent of Indian Affairs, with Nicholas Flood Davenport, who wrote the report, and with people like Dr. Peter Anderson Bryce, who actually sounded the alarm in 1907 and wrote a report in 1922 called National Crime.
It's really interesting, and we know the history, obviously, at Beechwood goes back a very long time. Why is today such an important day for you?
I think today's an important day because people are listening and people are coming to the cemetery. And I'm standing outside our grounds right now, and I can see about 200 people coming out of our sacred space after watching that movie. And people are eager to learn, they're eager to hear, and they're eager to find out more. And I think for the first time we're seeing that. We're seeing people really opening up to not only the education, but to hear the truth.
Mm-hmm. And the truth matters, and it certainly has been, especially in the last couple of years. And I know Indigenous people have been feeling this for a lot longer, but the last couple of years, Nicholas, has been such an important time for Canadians to really listen.
Exactly, and I think that's the key. And it's young people, it's students, it's business people, it's people from all walks of life, all backgrounds. They're finally coming, and they're coming around to do something. And I think we're seeing that moment in Canadian history where we're going to look at the 94 calls to action and be like, they're doable. We can move forward on them. It's time. There's no more time to waste. And I think that's what we're hoping to do tonight. And then we're ending the entire night with CBC's The Audience. It's a 1978 teleplay that we matched to images. And it tells the story of Duncan Campbell Scott and Peter Anderson Bryce, and how it was wanton neglect by the Canadian government.
And talk to us a little bit about that. How did that come about, Nicholas?
So in Vancouver on September 30th, 1978, as part of a research project on Duncan Campbell Scott, the audience ended up discovering this entire other chapter that wasn't written. But for Indigenous folk, they knew it. They already knew this chapter. So it was an entire look at the different conversations through reports, through letters between these two figures, both a protagonist and antagonist of the Indian residential school program. So it's quite symbolic to be able to do that here because both are buried at Beechwood.
And you know, those are important conversations to have, obviously, and the way that you're portraying it and having people being able to really use different mediums. I mean, I think people really may not expect that from Beechwood.
No, and I think cemeteries are really a place to sort of share the history, right? You don't go to a cemetery of our age and not expect to be confronted with different parts of history, right? Like we've talked before, we've got everything from the military or the War of 1812 all the way to modern times. So our plaque program and the Reconciling History program is just sharing that history and sharing a history that didn't have a voice before. Or that did have a voice and we chose not to listen.
I was just going to say the same thing, Nicholas. Such an important point. Such an important point. How are you spending today? I know you're obviously working, but are you able to have any time for yourself today?
Well, we had a plaque unveiling. The Caring Society unveiled a plaque downtown Ottawa at the very library where Peter Henderson Bryce was able to self-publish a national crime. So imagine somebody self-publishing a report about Indigenous peoples in Canada called a national crime. And we unveiled a plaque with Dr. Blackstock and A7G, our partners. And it was just such a moment because as the plaque was unveiled, we were in the shadows to start this ceremony, and when the plaque was unveiled, it became light. So again, I don't know if it's a metaphor, I'm not sure, but it was a touching moment to see that where there's light, there's always truth.
I really like that. I like that. I'm sorry. I would have loved to have attended something like that. I think we're all trying to find a moment today, or at least I hope we are, Nicholas. I hope we're all sort of pausing today, and whether it's something as important, obviously, but to sit down and even just read the 94 recommendations that came out of the Truth and Reconciliation report, even starting there.
Oh, exactly. And I think it's so simple. And I think if somebody's looking for something to do today, it's to just open and listen. Be open, listen. And there are so many activities, there's so much programming on TV that it's not hard to sort of say, hey, I'm going to stop, I'm going to take a moment, I'm going to reflect.
And Beechwood, once again, I think if people haven't been before, what words of advice would you have for them if they decided after hearing our chat today that they were going to head your way?
Just come. Yeah, we've got bus services. OC Transpo is providing free bus service to Beechwood. Lady Di was chartered by the Historical Society of Ottawa. So if you're going from downtown to Beechwood, you in front of Darcy McGee's, you pick up the Lady Di dive, and you come to Beechwood. So it's a wonderful way to do it. It's very straightforward. And if not, come tonight, 7 o'clock. We'll be playing, as I said, CBC The Audience's amazing piece. And it's something that the truth was there. We just didn't listen.
Beautifully said. And we've got so many different guests today. We've got Claudette Commanda joining us, and we have Bob Joseph joining us, as well as Cindy Blackstock. You mentioned Dr. Blackstock. And
it's just a wonderful, and we appreciate everything you're doing and sharing that voice. And
of course,
I'm being called to lead a tour. So
okay, I will let you go, my friend. I know how busy you are. Nicholas McCarthy joining us today from Beechwood.
Thank you so much for your time.
It's my pleasure. Nicholas certainly works very hard, and we appreciate him bringing these types of events to our attention. And it really is an opportunity today on the Samla Pride Show, this special edition, as an opportunity for you to learn what's going on in this community, but once again, learn from some of these great guests that we have today. Claudette Commanda joins us here quite a bit on City News, and of course, she's an Algonquin elder, and she's also the Chancellor of the University of Ottawa, and she is absolutely incredible to listen to, and there's times where I'm interviewing Claudette where I just want to sit back and listen, and today, it's about listening. Stay with us here on City News.
Sam LaPrade will be right back on City News.
1011
The Sam LaPrade Show continues on City News.
1011 FM and 1310 AM.
Today is a special edition of the Sam LaPrade Show. It is the day we are focusing on the National Truth and Reconciliation Day. We know across Canada we are doing that. Today's about learning. And I have learned so much over the last couple of years from Trina Mather-Simard, and she joins me now. Hi, Trina.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Trina, I have to say right off the top that I can't even believe that you could even spend this time with me, because I know the farm is very busy today. So I just want to say off the top, thank you for taking the time.
Oh, we always welcome the opportunity.
Thank you so much. Okay, so tell us all about the farm. It's such an incredible initiative for people that have never heard. Give us the rundown.
Yeah, so we, our organization, Indigenous Experience, had the opportunity to move on this beautiful 164-acre property, the former Lone Star Ranch, for those that know it, and we have opened Madoa Cay Farms. which is means to share the land. And, really it's an Indigenous working farm, farm to table culinary experiences and cultural experiences.
It really is. It's amazing. And I have to tell everybody where it is because I think it's the most beautiful location. The Hunt Club, of course, right at the 416 Moody area. And I love the location for so many reasons because it's easy to get to, first of all, Trina, and it's this little gem that sits there that people don't even know about.
It's amazing how many people visit us who've lived in the area, and because it was, a private event kind of operation with Lone Star, who have never been to the farm, and so we get so many families that just kind of come and, spend a day on the weekend there, and so close to the city, but you really forget it's such a, a big, beautiful property.
Absolutely, it is. And tell us today, what's happening at the farm, and how can people become engaged?
Yeah, so today we've actually allowed some of our community members, it's a little closed during the day today. We have some private ceremony and sacred fire happening, but we are opening up this evening, and we're opening our Tagwagi Festival with a reconciliation dinner. And so we have Chef Trudy Metcalf-Coe has been working with some students that we've had on the farm the last couple of months for Indigenous Foodways. And they've created this beautiful feast, and it's all really in honor of our survivors, residential school, day school, and the 60s Scoop. So all of the people that have purchased tickets have sponsored a second ticket to survivors. So we're really bringing everyone together tonight to honor and celebrate them.
Wow, that's incredible. And Trina, as I've gotten to know you, I've gotten to know all of the work, the culinary. We talk about, of course, the Solstice Festival and all of those pieces. And it really is amazing to me the opportunities for us to learn about everything from beading to the culinary piece. And tonight will be very special.
It really will. And, we're so proud of our students. They've been working with all of these different Indigenous chefs, and they've been learning about harvesting and foraging and basically, the entire process of Indigenous foodways. And so it's kind of all coming together this weekend, both with our dinner, and they're serving traditional foods at our Harvest Festival at the Tagwagi event as well.
Wow, that's amazing. Tell me about tomorrow.
Yeah, so all weekend, we had been planning, our beautiful change of season Tagwagi Festival, which is, performances and storytelling on the stage, a vendors, farmers type market with makers and food products, horse-drawn wagon rides, and of course my favorite Ojibwe spirit horses.
Yes.
But we actually had the community reach out just in the last couple of weeks. And, some of the community members wanted to have a powwow, a celebration in honor of Every Child Matters. And so we actually have a whole powwow happening this weekend as well now.
Wow. How do you keep up with it all, Trina? It seems like you're always inviting people in, which is lovely.
We are. We just have a great team, behind us. There's, so many of our community are a big part of us being able to pull these events together.
For sure. And is that open to the public then this weekend?
It is. So I know tonight's dinner is sold out, but I think we still did have some tickets available for Saturday or Sunday visits to Tagwagi and now to the Every Child Matters powwow as well.
No, it's fantastic. And I know that this date has been in your calendar for a long time, and a lot of people would love to have time with you. And I understand that you are in Sault Ste. Marie today.
Yes, I am. So I know they're busy at the farm,
right.
But I'm actually helping Indigenous Tourism Ontario to produce another festival here in Sault Ste. Marie for the National Weekend of Truth and Reconciliation.
And I understand, as I'm hearing about Indigenous tourism, I'll be honest with you, Trina, just preparing for today, it's not something I heard about.
Yeah, so, Indigenous tourism, so it's really been growing over the last number of years. We were one of the earlier ones. There wasn't a lot of us in the industry 22 years ago. But it's so amazing for me to see, we've brought all these, kind of newer partners together, in the Sioux and these other cities. And, it's growing so much. And to me, it plays such a critical role in reconciliation, because it really creates those opportunities to bring our Indigenous community, in connection with other Canadians. And so I really think tourism's playing a growing role in that in our communities.
It certainly is, for sure. And I know, this day, obviously, this is the second National Day for Truth and Reconciliation in this country. Are you able to step away for 30 minutes and spend just time by yourself reflecting?
No, not myself, but, happy to be part of creating opportunities for, our survivors that, that really need that time and space today. And, the event I'm helping to produce up here in Sault Ste. Marie, it's actually an opening of a residential school center here. So it's been their grand opening today that we're helping to produce, and, wonderful for them to be able to bring the survivors and community all together here.
And I really want to say, Trina, because of course we've gotten to know each other over the last couple of years, but you've been working on this for a lot longer. And I think many Canadians, non-Indigenous Canadians, are waking up, are listening, are opening our eyes and our ears and our minds. And it's not lost on me, Trina, that you've been doing this for a lot longer. And we are... Many of us are sort of looking to you and sort of asking to speak to you on important days like this. And but it's not lost on me that you've been doing this for a long time.
I was just speaking with someone earlier today, and they were asking, how things have changed. And when we started in Indigenous tourism, 22 years ago, our market was really international people that were coming to Canada that wanted that kind of authentic Canadian experience. And it just, it makes my heart happy to see how many Canadians now are searching out those experiences and really looking for ways to increase their awareness and connect and learn. So, it's been a great change, because we have seen the difference on how many more Canadians and local families are engaged.
Mm-hmm. And speaking about families, I mean, this really is about children, speaking about, residential schools and what Indigenous children have gone through. The fact that non-Indigenous Canadian children are learning, I'm hoping every school today has an opportunity for children to really understand what today is all about. I know youth and children are a big part for you as well, Trina.
Absolutely. We, to me, that's our future generation. And, I think our kids are teaching us now, and, thankfully learning a little more in school, still a work in progress, but, starting to learn a little more of the true history and being able to, I think view Canada differently. And, they're becoming more educated, and they're helping, the older generations, like in my generation, to really follow that path. So I really do think that connecting with the children and youth is so important.
For sure. And do you see it really building, on, this is our second year, as we know, building, like, next year even being, more impactful? I just see that it's just growing in my perspective, but I'd love yours.
Absolutely. I do see the growth even from last year. I think of people really recognizing, what the day means, and, more people going out into their community and searching for those experiences. And so, I hope it just continues to grow each year. And, it's something that all Canadians and Indigenous communities come together on this day. And
absolutely. Trina, I really appreciate your time. I know how busy you are. Trina Mather-Simard joining us today. And you've just been, you've just been incredible, and you've been very patient with us. I know I've asked you lots of questions, and you've always answered them very gracefully. So thank you.
We appreciate the opportunity to share our message. So Chimigwech for having me.
Thank you. Trina Mather-Simard joining us today. And if you haven't been to Matahokie Farm, it is absolutely gorgeous. It is for those local people here in Ottawa. It is where the old Lone Star is, and certainly it has been transformed, and it's beautiful. And every time I drive by, I'm in that area, I just smile, knowing that is now part of our community and such an important part. When we come back, I have to say, one of my favorite people, Claudette Commanda, is going to join us, an Algonquin elder and the Chancellor of the University of Ottawa. Stay with us here on City News.
Sam LaPrade will be right back on City News.
101.1 FM and 1310.
1 for local news, traffic, and weather for Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News 1011 everywhere.
Good afternoon. It's Friday, September 30th. I'm Pirushka Gopal-Kista. Right now in Ottawa and in Smiths Falls, it's sunny and 15 degrees. Here's what's making news this hour. Many leaders will be honoring the second annual National Truth and Reconciliation Day, including Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. Trudeau heads to the capital later today, where there will be several events marking the second annual National Day of Truth and Reconciliation. Thousands of people will march from Parliament Hill, led by residential school survivors and children, to a commemorative stage at LeBreton Flats. Now, there's also a march underway calling on the federal government to change the name of Sir John A. Macdonald Parkway. The Assembly of First Nations National Chief says today is about the survivors of Canada's residential schools and the children who died. Chief Roseanne Archibald says the day is an opportunity to reflect on the impact of the schools and how Indigenous peoples were treated and the roles that the institutions played in Canada's histories. The federal holiday was established after suspected unmarked burial sites were discovered at residential schools around the country. Now, it may be a federal holiday, but here in Ontario, not everything will be open today. Canada Post will be closed, as well as banks. However, schools, shopping centres and grocery stores will remain open today. Now, some city services will have restricted hours, including recreation centres, but today's city's recycling and garbage collection will go ahead as usual. Now, that includes the city's transit services, including OC Transpo and Paratranspo. City News Time, 12:31. I'm Pirushka Gopal-Kista. For news anytime, head to ottawa.citynews.ca.
The Sam LaPrade Show continues on City News
1011 FM and 1310 AM.
Today is a special day, of course, here on the Sam LaPrade Show. It is the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. And however you're spending your day, I know many people have the day off work. Many kids are in school today, hopefully learning. I'm hoping at minimum that we take some time to listen. And even though I'm a radio host, I'm all about listening today. I wanted to spend some time today with someone I have a great amount of respect for, and that is Claudette Commanda. Hello, Claudette.
Hello?
Hi, Claudette. How are you?
Oh, I'm fine, Sam. How are you?
Good. It's so lovely to be with you. Of course, an Algonquin elder and a chancellor of the University of Ottawa. It's amazing to me that I know you're very busy today, and I know we've got you on a tight timeline. But thank you so much for spending time with us. How are you spending your day today, Claudette?
How am I spending my day today? I am involved with many different events. I'm with the survivors and the intergenerational survivors. I'm with my family who are survivors of residential schools and day schools. And the day began in a beautiful way with ceremony. Yeah, very emotional, absolutely emotional, especially when you see the children, because we have to remember that residential schools, a policy targeting the children. So as First Nations people, when we see our children, they are such a blessing. So my heart soars. And also, I have to say, Sam, when I stood on Parliament Hill earlier to welcome everyone to the territory and to do a blessing, my heart soared. The large number of Canadians who came out to reflect, to honor, to remember, to show respect, and just share love with one another, and it was just, it's beautiful.
Did you ever think you'd see a day like today, Claudette?
No, I didn't. No, but we hoped and we prayed that would come a day that Canada would wake up to not only see, but to feel our truths, that what our people, their survivors, what they've been talking about, and for Canada to wake up and acknowledge that the history of Canada was built on these kind of atrocities. Mm-hmm. And we need to heal, and healing is our people, First Nations or Indigenous peoples. We're still healing. We're going to heal, but as Canada as a whole, the non-Indigenous needed this healing for the children. So important.
And Claudette, you know, I look back to May and June of 2021. It was such a horrific time. We know that, you know, a number of graves were discovered at that time, and it was a wake up call for many Canadians. And I remember, you know, hearing in the media people using the words, you know, these graves were discovered. And, you know, a friend of mine said to me, Sam, they weren't discovered. Indigenous people knew they were there all along.
Yes, that's true. We knew. Our survivors came home. Those that came home, they told those stories. They told the truth of what they witnessed as children in those schools. Our people believed them. We believed one another, but certainly the government and the churches didn't believe. They knew that was going on, but they denied it. And they made sure there were obstacles put in place so Canadians would not learn about it. And it was through education. They made sure that their education would continue to deny it and continue to make everything invisible of First Nations people. But you know what they say, truth is so powerful. It takes time, but eventually the truth comes out. And I believe, and I will hold to my words that I said last year and what all our people said, 215 little voices woke the world. And Canada had no choice but to wake up and to listen. And I know many Canadians were mortified, and they just couldn't believe that as a country as tolerant and loving and giving and as Canada could have done this. But you know, we always had hope. We always had hope, and through our prayers, which are being answered, that you're giving us this room now to tell our stories and our truths to be told, and Canadians are listening.
And we know, Claudette, that the 215, children that were buried there, it was just the beginning. There are thousands. Will we ever really know, Claudette, how many children?
Well, I hope that we know that the full answer. I hope we do, but it's going to take many years, because let's not forget how many of those residential schools were here in Canada, and every one of those residential schools, they have unmarked or they buried the truth. So God only knows what lies beneath the ground there. But we have to be patient. We have to be hopeful. And maybe in our lifetime, we may not see how many, but I know our children will. But we have to continue raising that awareness, that we have to look at it from this perspective. X number of residential schools across the country means X number of unknowns. And we have to continue using our voices to raise those unknowns to become known. And therefore, it's all part of the truth. And therefore, it's all part of the healing and then reconciliation.
How important, Claudette, was the visit by the Pope this year to apologize on Canadian soil?
Well, I think it was important for some of the survivors because they truly appreciated the Pope coming here and making his apology. But I also know that many survivors didn't feel that it was meaningful. And we have to respect those survivors for their feelings, whether they accepted it or whether they did not accept it. But I think if we look at it from a big picture, Canadians saw that, and even the Vatican and even the Catholic Church, for that matter, and all religious denominations, to see that if the Pope came here and spoke about this, he offered an apology. Well, I think that's meaningful because it's the first step. It doesn't erase what happened because now there's work that needs to be done.
Right. It's just one step, right?
Exactly. It's just one step amongst
thousands of steps that have to be taken. And I said this morning to the crowd of Canadians and Indigenous peoples, you have to make September 30th every day. Reconciliation is every day, because reconciliation is about responsibility. Reconciliation is about the truth. So let's hold September 30th every day in our hearts, and let us Canadians, remember, honor, respect, and show that the love for First Nations people. That's so important, because our children deserve that love.
We only have, thank you for that, Claudette. We only have 2 minutes, but I have to just end on this note with you, because you know how proud I am of you, and seeing, getting to know you over the years, and hearing the announcement that you became the Chancellor of the University of Ottawa. As you know, I squealed when I heard the news, because I just think it's brilliant. I think it's lovely. And what does that mean for you on a day like today? I think about the first day you would have walked into the University of Ottawa, to think that you would be the Chancellor someday. I can't imagine it, Claudette.
Thank you for that question, Sam. I was thinking about that this morning as I was standing and participating in the ceremonies, and I just said, this is so, it's time. It's our time now as Indigenous people. It's our time now to shine. And I'm going to offer all my wisdom and my knowledge to make that university and Canada a better place for all people, Indigenous and non-Indigenous, because what we do today is for the children. But Sam, I'm so, my heart is sore, because I'm looking forward to taking on that role as Chancellor, because this is a prime opportunity to bring forth the truth. It's a prime opportunity to make positive change that's so much needed.
Oh, I'm thrilled you could join us today, and I just wish nothing but the best for you, Claudette. Thank you so much for spending time with us on City News.
Thank you so much, Sam.
Thank you.
You take good care and have a good day.
Absolutely. Thank you. Claudette Commanda joining us today, Algonquin elder from Kittaganny-Zibi, and of course, Chancellor of the University of Ottawa. Claudette joining us today, and we have lots of great guests for you today. Bob Joseph is going to join us a little bit later. Cindy Blackstock is going to join us a little bit later, as well as Mitchell Case is going to join us. He is the Regional Councillor for the Métis Nation of Ontario. We're going to be talking about the Métis experience in the residential schools and what it was like. And this is something I don't know a lot about, and I'm prepared to listen today. Stay with us here on City News.
Sam LaPrade will be right back on City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
The Sam LaPrade Show continues on City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Well, today on this National Day of Truth and Reconciliation, the second annual, September 30th, is a very important day, and we really want to hear from different people across Canada, of course, and in this community. We wanted to spend some time today with Mitch Case, Regional Councillor for the Métis Nation of Ontario. Hi, Mitch.
Hi there, how are you?
Good. Thank you so much for spending time with us. I can only imagine, as all of our guests are today, it's a busy day for you, Mitch. How are you spending today?
I'm spending the day attending some events hosted by the local Residential School Survivors Association, and going to go visit some of my nieces and nephews later on today. And yeah, that's how I'm spending the day, thinking about the legacy of residential schools.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting. We just had Claudette Commanda on, of course, Algonquin elder, and I'm sure you're familiar with Claudette. And one of my questions to Claudette was, really regarding the apology that the Pope gave on Canadian soil. How do you feel, Mitch, about that?
I think the apology from the Pope, I think, was a meaningful step in terms of reconciliation, not because of the content. I don't I don't personally think I should weigh on the content. I think that's up to survivors to really decide what the content. I think the meaningful part of that, of the Pope's apology and his visit to Canada, was that it was because of the determination and the absolute. Unending determination of the survivors from across this country to push for justice for themselves and for their families and their communities, and for those children who never came home. And so, for me, it was a really, really meaningful experience because it was survivors who made that happen. There's a lot of people in the church or in the government or whatever that seem to want to take credit for that, but the reality is it's because of survivors that happened.
And it's so interesting. Your perspective is so interesting because, you traveled to Rome with the Medi delegation to see the Pope for that official apology that took place before the apology that the Pope did on Canadian soil. And, I remember seeing your picture, of course. You have a beautiful beaded vest on, flowers on it. It's beautiful. What was that experience like?
For me as a leader within the Métis Nation, it was a meaningful experience, particularly because in so many ways the opportunity for those three survivors, Angie, Anne, and Emile, to speak to the Holy Father was really the first time that Métis survivors have been heard at all. Most people don't. I'd say most people in Canada don't really understand the residential school system yet. They don't understand that history. But beyond that, there is a real lack of understanding that the residential school settlement agreement excluded, by and large, Métis survivors from that. And so Métis survivors were not heard by the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, did not have access to therapy and counseling that was offered as part of the settlement agreement or compensation for their experiences. And so for me, to be able to be there in that room when really for the first time ever the Métis experience was heard was really, really meaningful. And to be able to accompany those three beautiful, wonderful, kind and loving survivors, Angie, Anne, and Emile, and to be there with them was a real honor for me. I keep getting asked, it was a real honor to meet the Pope. I said, well, I imagine it was an honor for the Pope to meet us. Yes, I imagine it was for him. Yeah.
I like that, Mitch. So let me ask you this. You've touched on a lot there. I've got lots of questions, but I really want to do a lot of listening today. So I want to just say, why was it different? Why did the Medi community not be recognized as you indicated?
Yeah, so what it comes down to, and to try to do this in a very quick amount of time, what it comes down to is a jurisdictional battle between the provinces and the Canadian government over whether or not Section 9124 applied to Métis people. And so Section 9124 is the section of the Canadian Constitution that gives the federal government responsibility for Indigenous issues. Section 92 lays out the responsibilities of the provinces, and there was an argument made for over a century between the federal government and the provincial governments about who had responsibility to deal with Métis issues. And so while there was that gap, there was still the need from government perspective to remove Métis people from our lands, the same as they did for Inuit and First Nations. And so in many situations, the schools that were attended by Métis students were funded by the provincial governments or funded by the churches themselves and not by the federal government. And so they were left out of the settlement agreement because the settlement agreement only included the 139 schools that were operated. They had to be operated by the church and funded by the federal government. There could be no other arrangement. And so because of that weird technicality, Métis survivors who went through the exact same abuse, went through the exact same loss of language and culture, separation from family, all of the trauma that comes with that, are now left many years, years and years after the settlement agreement, still with no one listening to them. Provinces won't come to the table and take responsibility. The federal government won't take responsibility, and the churches seem to have just tried to wash their hands and say, well, it's up to the government.
I really believe, Mitch, people, and you've pointed it out, and not to take your words, but I definitely don't think Canadians know this.
No, I don't think so. And I think, it was said by much smarter people than me, but, it's not really any individual's fault that they don't know about this. It's not like while these crimes were happening in residential schools, the government was out there educating Canadians about the crimes that they were committing down the road at a residential school. So, it's understandable that people don't know, but we need to move beyond that now, and we need people to meaningfully engage in the education that is required to move us beyond this situation, right? And if we're all going to put on our orange shirts and everyone's going to cry and people are going to, tear up on TV, that's all well and good, but if we truly feel bad about what happened, then, survivors from somewhere like the Isle Lacrosse residential school in northern Saskatchewan, which was a Métis residential school, the survivors from that school have been calling for a process to deal with that issue for decades now. I've lost track of time now of how long it's been since the settlement agreement was entered into in 2008 or 2009, and they have been saying consistently since then, the survivors from Isle Lacrosse have been saying, it doesn't matter who paid the bill at the end of the day. What happened here was wrong, and someone should apologize for it. Someone should make it right, and no one will. And it still seems to be. I've heard, I've been told by government officials, by federal officials, we can't let Saskatchewan off the hook. Well, that's all well and good for some sort of legal argument between your Justice Department and theirs, but meanwhile, these survivors are aging and leaving us without anyone ever acknowledging what they went through.
Because you're right. I mean, it doesn't really matter who paid the bill in the end. The kids and the children paid the price.
Exactly. And if we're still going to haggle with, survivors over some, interesting, curious constitutional arrangement from 100 years ago, then we're really not sorry, because we're still willing to haggle about it as if we're used car salesmen rather than we're a country that has committed genocide against Indigenous people, and we want to change that, right? But if we're still going to haggle about it, as if we're going to throw in a free set of winter tires here, or then we're not. We really haven't moved anywhere, right? That's my sad reflection today, quite frankly.
Mitch, I appreciate that, and we have, maybe about a minute, maybe 2 minutes, and I know that seems like a very short period of time, and on radio it is a short period of time, but I would love you to tell me something or share with us something that you just think that we need to know today that isn't out there. What is something that you're thinking, Sam, I just have to tell people about this?
Well, I think the thing we have to recognize and understand is that residential schools were not set up to destroy language and culture for the sake of destroying language and culture. They were set up to destroy language and culture in order to essentially eradicate Indigenous people, in order for Canada to claim our lands and resources, to claim everything that is now this country, to be able to profit off of and commodify the resources of the traditional territories of Indigenous people from coast to coast to coast. And the reality being that is where Canada built its wealth from. And so there is an obligation. And, if at the end of the day we all say, governments and Canadians say, oh, well, we're all very sorry about it, but at the end of the day, there is no process, and First Nations land claim processes take 30 years and cost the communities themselves incredible amounts of money in order to just get justice. And the Métis Nation, there is no claims policy. We have been asking and demanding a claims policy for 42 years. We've been advocating for that since pre the 1982 Constitution, because the federal policy excludes Métis communities. And so, if at the end of the day, I think it was Archbishop Tutu in South Africa who said, when the missionaries came to South Africa, they had the Bible and we had the land. And they said, let us pray. We closed our eyes, we opened our eyes, and they had the land and we had the Bible. And that is the reality that, Canada and, private industry and whatever else have taken up our resources, and all the orange shirts in the world won't change that unless they meaningfully commit to land back.
I have learned a lot from you today.
Well,
I really
thank you.
appreciate it, Mitch. I'm so sorry that our time is coming to an end, but I'm here every day between 12 and 2, so I'm hoping you'll join us again and we can continue the conversations and the listening.
Absolutely, anytime.
Thank you, Mitch. Mitch Case joining us, Regional Councillor, Region 4 for Métis Nation of Ontario. When we come back, Bob Joseph is going to join us, and you might look on your bookshelf and you might see the book, 21 Things You May Not Know About the Indian Act. Well, Bob wrote this book, and if you haven't read it, you need to. You want to learn about all of this on City News.
Sam LaPrade will be right back on City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Number 1 for local news, traffic, and weather for Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News 101.1 everywhere.
Good afternoon. It's Friday, September 30th. I'm Perushka Gopal-Kista. Right now in Ottawa and in Smiths Falls, it's sunny and 15 degrees. Here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. It's National Truth and Reconciliation Day around the country, and several events will be held in the nation's capital to commemorate the day. Now, more on that in just a moment. But Algonquin Elder Claudette Commander told the special edition of the Sam LaPrade Show a few moments ago that it was heartwarming to see the thousands of people commemorating the importance of today's events.
And also, I have to say, Sam, when I stood on Parliament Hill earlier to welcome everyone to the territory and to do a blessing, my heart soared. The large number of Canadians who came out to reflect, to honor, to remember, to show respect, and just share love with one another. And it was just, it's beautiful.
She says that the National Truth and Reconciliation Day should continue every day, not just on September 30th. Commander became the first Indigenous Chancellor of the University of Ottawa when she was appointed to the role earlier this year. And over at Rideau Hall, Governor General Mary Simon welcomed around 100 school children and staff to take part in celebrations for the National Day of Truth and Reconciliation.
The word that I'm going to teach you is a word in Inuktitut, and it's one word that means never to give up. It's a promise to commit yourself to action, no matter how hard the task may be. And that word is Ayuineta.
Now, events are being staged across Canada to mark the second annual day created after discoveries began last year of unmarked graves at former residential school sites. Now, other events happening in Ottawa include a National Day of Remembrance hosted by the Indigenous Arts Collective of Canada. Also happening right now is a community march where the public is also welcome to join Indigenous communities and residential school survivors. Now, this march is to call on the federal government to change the name of the Sir John A. Macdonald Parkway. Universities and colleges will be hosting their own events throughout the day to commemorate the National Day of Truth and Reconciliation. Now, since the province of Ontario has not declared today a stat holiday, not everything will be open in Ottawa today. Places like Canada Post and banks will remain closed, while schools, shopping centres and grocery stores are all open today with regular hours. Now, most museums in the city also remaining open and will have free admission for today only. As for City of Ottawa services, garbage and recycling collection will go ahead as usual. But some of Ottawa's recreation centres will operate under limited hours, so you might want to check ahead of time if you're planning to head to those recreation centres. As for transit, OC Transpo and Paratranspo will run as usual on the regular weekday schedule. And right now in Ottawa, it's mostly sunny and 13 degrees. I'm Perushka Gopal-Kista. For news anytime, head over to ottawa.citynews.ca.
The Sam LaPrade Show continues on City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Thank you for joining us here on City News and on Rogers TV. We're so happy that you're spending the National Day of Truth and Reconciliation with us today, and however you're reflecting today, we appreciate some of the time you're spending with us. I wanted to spend some time today with Bob Joseph. He's the author of 21 Things You May Not Know About the Indian Act. Hi, Bob.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. Thank you so much for spending time with us. And tell us where you are this morning.
I'm calling out today from Qualicum Beach in British Columbia.
Beautiful part of the country for sure. And Bob, you have certainly received a lot of recognition for this book. Did you ever think about it from the perspective of it's probably in a lot of hands today?
You know what? It was really stemmed from a blog idea. I wrote a blog article, 21 Things You May Not Know About the Indian Act, and it went really crazy. So I approached some book publishers and I said, "What do you think?" And they said, "Yeah, you know what? It'll probably do the same thing in bookstores that it did online, and we think you should publish." And so we published, and it really has been, a blessing for the conversation, I think, and for myself to have the book just 4 years on bestseller lists and award-winning, and it's all about on a book about the Indian Act. So who would have thought? Eh?
Right, exactly. It really is amazing. Why even start the blog? Where did it all come from?
Yeah, so I run a training business. I help governments and businesses and nonprofits like the Ontario SPCA work with Indigenous peoples. I provide training to help them with that, and it was the experience was great and the feedback was great, and I thought, there's a lot of people out there though that aren't as fortunate to spend a day or a half day with us, and so I started blogging as a way to try to reach out to the broader group of Canadians and a way to give back and to share our best stuff. And we've got over 1,000 blog posts and 3 ebooks and videos, and so that really was the important piece for me.
And why should this book be on the shelves and in the hands of all Canadians?
So one of the things that we do in all of our workshops with our clients is we get them in the beginning of the workshop to do a timeline exercise. And what I do is I ask them, and people tuning in today can participate. Think of a date in history that's specific to Indigenous peoples and come up with a sentence to describe it. And then what I do as a facilitator, or my other trainers, we begin to flip chart the responses. And what we find is there's early dates, Christopher Columbus, Jacques Cartier, the Royal Proclamation, and then we find lots of recent dates. Oka, the 2010 Winter Olympics, the whole first hour was, Indigenous peoples, and what we found was there was this gap in the middle between 1867 and about 1960 or 70, and it shows up all across the country. We train across the country, and there's always this sort of 70-year gap of information, and we show that to our learners to say, look, this is all of us. We've all gone to different schools, and here's our collective knowledge of Indigenous issues. And if you look into the gap, you see that's where residential schools were happening and banning of potlatches and all of the things that were happening in the Indian Act. And so, if we want to be effective and reconcile and live together in the future in a great way, we really have to be on the same page in terms of history. Mm-hmm. And so that was, sort of what got us going.
Anyway, it's interesting, and I'm probably not going to get the quote exactly right, but a guest a few minutes ago, Mitch Case, spoke about the fact, Canadians weren't being educated on the atrocities that were taking place down the street.
Yeah, they really weren't. Going back to my earliest days as a trainer in 1994, I can remember I was about 4 workshops in, and I was speaking about residential schools, and then we went to coffee break, and on the coffee break, I had a lady come up to me. She was crying. She had tears streaming down her face, and I said, "Hey, what's wrong? What's the matter?" She said, "I can't believe you. And I was surprised. I was working for a public corporation, Crown Corporation, and it was all valid and reliable information, and she was really struggling. And I said, well, what can't you believe? And she said, I can't believe my church would do that. And would the government be involved and the police would take away the kids? I'm sorry, I just can't believe you. And so I said, yeah, it's not many people know about this, but it is going to become part of the conversation, and it will become a really big thing. And but it helped me at that time realize, they just don't know what they don't know. And that a lot of the calls to action from the Truth and Reconciliation Commission were really about us educating ourselves on that history, trying to get on the same page.
For sure. I appreciate you sharing that. Because things do take time, right? I'm just mentally doing the time frame there. That's a long time ago. So what do we not know about the Indian Act? When someone asks you that, and I know you've got 21 things you may not know, but what's the first one that comes to mind when I ask that question?
There's so much we don't know. It's in every conversation. You think about the Coastal GasLink Wet'suwet'en pipeline. That's an Indian Act issue at its core. The Indian Act was designed to assimilate. That's what its purpose was. And so you took communities like the Wet'suwet'en, who had hereditary chiefs and were self-governing, had been for thousands of years, and we said, look, the way you're governing yourselves, that's wrong. We're passing legislation requiring you to elect a chief and council. And you only get 2 years, and you're allowed a chief and council member, for every 100 members. And by the way, you're accountable to us because we got to make sure this assimilation piece happens. And so that's the kind of stuff that people, they go, so there's an Indian Act connection here.
And what are some that, when you're training people, what are some of the things we don't know about the Indian Act that surprise people?
They learn about terminology, status Indians and non-status Indians, and how simple some things are. The definition of a band in the Indian Act is a band is a body of Indians. And so what does that mean? What it means is that an Indian agent showed up at your community one day with a name and, with a pen and a piece of paper and asked you for your name. They were going to start tracking people, right, as part of this assimilation process. So they'd say name, and you'd say, Aksum Mulligaleve, which is my traditional name. And they would write down Bob Joseph it is. And so, they sort of get a sense of that for the first time. I always get asked, are you related to the Josephs in this community or the Josephs at this other community? And one of the things about Canada, it's a hugely diverse country in terms of Indigenous peoples. We've got, people, right down the road who are Indigenous, but they speak a totally different language and have a completely different culture, and there's no ability to communicate. And so they start to have some of those aha moments where maybe Indian is very homogenizing, lumps them all into the same, but they're not really the same. And so when people ask me, are you related to the Josephs at Squamish, for example, I always say, no, I'm not, but I'm pretty sure we had the same Indian agent. So we actually have a little bit of fun sometimes in terms of just helping people understand what's going on. And then the goal was, and Canada needed a key performance indicator. How do we know when they've assimilated? Well, that's when they become non-status Indians. How does that happen? We will, women will lose their status if they marry non-Indigenous men. And so we tie that whole history forward, to help them really connect a lot of the dots.
Wow. It really is amazing. And I always, I've heard from people that people say there's a book inside everyone. And your book, the legacy that this book is already creating, and obviously will live for a very long time. What are you hoping the book accomplishes even a decade from now, Bob?
You know what? I'm thinking actually a little bit longer. My dad hangs out with religious, spiritual leaders, and they go on peace missions and fact-finding missions, and they went to the Middle East, and they visited. They were meeting with Palestinians and Israelis, and I said, "What are you up to?" He said, "We're going to the Middle East." And I said, "Palestine, Israel?" He said, "Yes." And I said, "Oh, I don't know anything about that. I said, do you? And he said, no, me neither, but that's what we're doing. We're going to go do some fact finding. We're not meeting with everybody, obviously, but we'll try to meet with both sides and get some insights and see if there's a way we can try and help out even. And I said, when you come back, can we talk? And he said, yes. So he came back, and I said, how was it? He said, it was pretty intense. It's a very long 2,000-year relationship, and he said if they didn't know you, they didn't trust you, and neither side would have known this group of people. And so he said you could feel that as he went in to meet with the different groups. And he said at one session he actually got spit on, and I said, well, I can't imagine anybody would spit on you. You guys were there on a fact-finding, sort of very peaceful mission. And he said, yeah. He said it was really intense. So I asked him, because he's big in the reconciliation movement. I said, so what does that mean? What do we do with that experience? And he said, well, for us, he said, I think we have to double down on reconciliations with Canadians, because, for me, it was a 2,000-year glimpse into the future. If we don't do something about this now, we could end up that far apart someday in the future. And he said, I'm not leaving this country to your kids, my kids, or anybody's kids. We've got to really work hard on this reconciliation piece, because it's an opportunity that maybe others haven't had, and you can see what the future can look like sometimes.
What an incredible perspective, Bob. Wow.
Yeah. It's hard. I can barely talk about it.
I know. I was thinking this as you were going on. I didn't know where you were going at first, and now I'm like, wow, I get it now. And today really is all about listening. I think about the National Day of Truth and Reconciliation, and of course, this is what I do. I'm a radio host, but I really am trying to listen today. And what you just shared, not only have I listened, but I've heard it. So thank you, Bob.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bob Joseph joining us today, author of 21 Things You May Not Know About the Indian Act. I have read it. It is on my bookshelf, and I'm happy to share it with anyone that would like to borrow it from me as well. Bob Joseph joining us today. When we come back, Cheryl Bauer is going to be here, creator of Voices Rock Canada. Lock it in to City News.
Sam LaPrade will be right back on City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
The Sam LaPrade Show continues on City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Gently walk upon this land as we lay a bed of feathers, sacred ground beneath our feet, precious bones remain forever, feet will never touch the floor, tiny shoes remain unworn. The sun won't shine on faces anymore. Love the souls of little angels, bow our heads.
This is Little Angels by Cheryl Bauer, the passionate creator of Voices Rock Canada, released this week in collaboration with Susan O'Quinn from Newfoundland's Mi'kmaq community in the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation, and they both join me now. Hello, Cheryl and Susan.
Hello.
Hello. Cheryl, tell me about Voices Rock Canada. The song is so beautiful. Tell me about Voices Rock Canada.
Oh, thank you very much, Sam, for having us. Voices Rock was conceptualized after the death of my husband. I've been part of a large-scale rock choir and found a lot of comfort in that community in the aftermath of that. And we began as rock choirs for children, and we now have 6 rock choirs across Toronto from ages 9 to 99, 1 virtual online choir for women physicians, And just opened this past September is a women physicians choir in Ottawa, your hometown.
Wow.
I created it for mental health and wellness, a sense of community, and particularly during the pandemic and during the height of the pandemic, it was such a necessity for so many people. And we're a safe place to express your inner rock star.
Oh, I love that. I love that. And Susan O'Quinn joins us as well, and an artist, of course, from Newfoundland. Are you in Newfoundland right now, Susan?
I'm actually in Mississauga right now.
You're in Mississauga, so you're in the province of Ontario. We're glad to have you here. And when you had the opportunity to collaborate on this particular song, what was that like for you?
It was just beautiful to have this opportunity and to collaborate with Cheryl. I've met Cheryl several years ago, and in terms of recognizing her as an ally to the Indigenous community, it was pretty obvious. Cheryl kind of lives and breathes supporting others. And this was very meaningful. I felt it was an opportunity to share my voice and for us to really honor the children who have passed and to grieve as a nation.
Mm-hmm. And the whole idea behind this, Cheryl, where did it come from?
Susan is a social worker. I went back to school, interestingly enough, for social work. And while taking that degree, I was also privileged to take a co-degree of Indigenous Studies. And I was compelled into action to be an ally and create art and music that reflected my learning. And when the children's bones were discovered in Kamloops in May 2021, it sent shockwaves through the non-Indigenous community, myself included, even though I had studied it. And Little Angels came to me as a full song with very thoughtful contributions by people like Susan, my sister in music, and by other members of the Indigenous community.
Mm-hmm. And what are you hoping for today? I know it was released this week, very important week leading up to today, National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. What are you hoping, Susan, happens with this song today?
Well, the theme for this year for National Truth and Reconciliation